Welcome to Brooklyn Savvy. Today we're talking about one of the most pressing topics of our time, green jobs and the transition to a sustainable economy. What does the rise of green jobs mean for our communities and workforce? Joining us today are three dynamic leaders at the forefront of this conversation. We have Tonya Gayle, Executive Director of Green City Force. From the Brooklyn Navy Yard, we're excited to welcome Nakisha Evans, and representing Con Edison, we're joined by Joeann Walker. Together, we'll explore the challenges and opportunities of the green economy and what it means for the future. So let's jump in.
I wanted to create a safe space to have uncomfortable yet transformative conversations that move people, amplifying the voices of those who are underrepresented and who inspire positive change. I'm Toni Williams, and this is Brooklyn Savvy.
Welcome to Brooklyn Savvy. So, Joeann, I am going to toss the first question to you because it's obvious, but there's so many levels to it. So, what is a green job and why is Con Edison driving this?
Let me sort of start back with, New York has some of the most ambitious climate change goals that have come down. And this involves, a huge portion of that is preparing our communities for these new green jobs and the workforce development that's in the pipeline. So with Con Edison, the real focal point was basically, how do we bring our community along as we're, trying to meet these goals, along with creating other jobs and also getting folks the skills that they need to do those jobs. And that was really top of mind with Con Edison. And so when we're looking at what is a green job, we're looking at those types of jobs that can help us meet those goals under the Climate Act. And so what does that mean? It's looking at solar installation, EV, electricity, even to just regular green building, like construction-related green jobs. And so I think when people think about green jobs, we're always thinking about renewable energy, which is important, but there's this whole other world that talks about just sort of infrastructure, building up the infrastructure to make sure that it can withstand climate change as we go further, keep going further on. As part of that goal, Con Edison sort of really took a look back and said, hey, what are we doing to help our communities move forward? We really need to invest in our communities, and one way is preparing our communities for the skills to work in green jobs. So part of that we did change, which is sort of exciting for the company, is we realigned our strategic partnership giving. And so now we are supporting nonprofits, some that are here on the panel, about investing in sort of these programs and nonprofits that are really training the future for the jobs that are to come.
You see, because I used to think a green job was actually just working for an energy company. So even though you're an attorney, it's a green job because you're working in the energy sector. But clearly, it's far more defined than that.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. It is expansive. When we're thinking about clean energy in the future, it's not just about working for an energy company.
Right.
That's easy.
Right.
It's looking at the types of jobs that are going to really help bring us along with clean energy and also withstand climate change. We've been talking about, in current time right now, like LA, where it's like literally a portion of the country is on fire. And so when we think about green jobs, we also can think about, types of jobs that help mitigate with the climate change. So it's thinking expansively about what is a job that's helping us meet our climate change goals and preparing people for those specific types of jobs. So it's a wide range of things.
So you talked about Con Edison giving to nonprofits that are in this space. So that's going to turn me right over to you, Tonya, because you're Green City Force. Talk to us about what Green City Force is doing and who it's focusing on.
We are a workforce training organization, a nonprofit based in the 5 boroughs of New York City, and we're also part of a national collection of 150 conservation corps. And our program as a nonprofit, with sponsors like Con Ed and others, are able to bring in young people, 18 to 24-year-olds, to have a full-time experience through a service initiative to build green job skills while they're also helping to transform positively the communities they come from, most often public housing across New York City. They're doing things like building farms, growing food. They're educating fellow residents about energy reduction, why it matters to have investments that support the stability and the environmental health of the buildings they live in, the communities they live in, and how they can be agents of change for their community while also building economic mobility.
Now, you talked about housing projects. Is that an intentional strategy?
It's an intentional strategy because when we started in 2009, there was this concentration of roughly 2,700 buildings in New York City, the largest landlord, huge physical footprint. The climate challenges of that and the greenhouse gas emissions from that community, which is a city in a city across the 5 boroughs, is tremendous and causes all kinds of health challenges, whether it's asthma, air issues, poor ventilation in buildings, and the communities that live there are feeling the consequences of that in terms of health disparities, safety, et cetera. Roughly 50,000 people of that community of 500,000 are in the window of 18 to 24-year-olds with very, very low economic opportunity.
Right, disconnected youth it used
exactly.
to be called.
So the idea of the model is solving 2 very significant issues in a concentrated space of the public housing community, where we're addressing job opportunities, employment, and health, and building thriving communities in the process.
So it sounds somewhat like a repair situation, where this is the population that has suffered an environmental justice burden, and so this is the population that we're going to be working with to make sure that they're able to reap some benefits from green jobs.
We are thinking of it in a term of almost like an apprenticeship core, where you're getting training, you're getting workforce credentials, skills building, while you're actually serving to improve the community you come from.
Are you getting employment opportunities when you're finished?
That is the goal, absolutely. We have team members on our staff that work with employer partners, and we work to prepare the young people as they're going through the training to be workforce ready, so that when they graduate within 6 months of completion, they're either going back to school or they're getting jobs entry level, and our goal is for that to continue and they get the next job and advanced training and promotions and benefits, et cetera. So it becomes a career path.
Now, you're an AmeriCorps product. Talk to us about that.
So AmeriCorps is a national service model, and so it's serving your country, it's for serving your fellow citizens. So with an AmeriCorps model, you are literally getting things done for America, and you're doing that with an intentional way for young people to get an understanding of what it takes to build their skills and also give back. It becomes a collective. You're beyond just yourself.
To touch on what you were saying too, I think that from a Con Ed standpoint, yes, it's also about bringing the clean energy transition along, but it's also focusing on, the most marginalized and disadvantaged communities. And we've been very intentional about that, making sure that our programs and the programs that we're funding, touch on the disadvantaged communities, because part of our sort of moving forward with corporate giving too is that we want to make sure that people are getting trained for jobs that are well-paying jobs.
Right, upwardly mobile.
Yeah,
yes.
so I was just thinking about the economic empowerment piece that you were mentioning, that it becomes so important for people. I've been working with this young man and helping him find a job, and he was just talking about, the doors can be open by just going to a training program just on construction, basic construction, and just seeing his eyes sort of light up about sort of the opportunities. It was pretty cool to see that, and it's just, yes, it's just one person, but when you see that the people, that there's doors open to access to like jobs that are really well paying, it's a game changer.
And I'm very happy about what you're saying, because that means that the company is still very much targeted on marginalized communities and has a definite understanding that there is such a thing as a marginalized community. So that's wonderful.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. Now the Navy Yard, Nakisha, the Navy Yard has always been in this green job space. Talk to us about what is going on here when it comes to training and your employment center and all of that.
I think the Navy Yard occupies a very unique space when we're talking about kind of the intersection of economic development, workforce development, and the green economy. We specialize in essentially incubating and supporting small to medium-sized businesses. A lot of our businesses here are startups, so they're bringing something new to market. And within that, we've seen a number of, green companies come out of that who are specializing in everything. We were just talking about, we have one company here that specializes in biodegradable road salts. We have another company that is doing things around carbon capture. We have companies who are making fabric out of sugar.
Or how about the crickets? Talk about that one.
Yeah. We have a company who's experimenting with like how to, create a high protein flour out of crickets because with climate change, there is some level of food insecurity, instability that these extreme weather events can cause. So you have a lot of these companies that are coming and they're bringing new ideas, new thoughts into the space. And that means new technology, new skills that are needed. We have a number of design companies that are really looking into passive construction. From building the house, what are some techniques, what are some approaches that you can use to make that house more energy efficient just through its construction. And so this gives us an opportunity to see like not only the new technology and innovation that is coming as companies and entrepreneurs try to respond to what's happening with climate change, but also the new skills and job opportunities. Because some of these jobs are not necessarily a complete departure from old jobs. Sometimes it's a mix. You have a mix of, new technologies designed to mitigate what's happening with climate change, but then you also have some of the existing technologies. And so, having folks who can navigate both, we see that a lot with like electrical vehicles and things like that. People need to understand how to work on, traditional gas power cars, but they also need to understand how to deal with, battery power cars. And so we get to see that and experience that up front, and that informs how we think about training and how we approach our own training strategy. And so we've been looking at like, what does it mean to have like an EV charging station maintenance training here at the yard? Looking at what does it mean to think about how heat pumps get incorporated. And those trainings then create opportunity. And I think the more that we are able to see what's going on in business and then translate that into training, translate that into opportunity, the more that folks who are maybe starting out or looking to transition into a new field understand like the different skills that they need to get there and what that there actually is. And I think that that's going to be really key for the green economy because not everybody is as aware of it in the same way. It may not feel like it has anything to do with you, but there may be opportunities there for you. And, as things kind of play out over the years, you can be a part of the solution for a lot of it through your employment and through the technologies and skills
So
that you
how
get.
is your strategy informed? Is it informed through the city and the action plan, or does it come from the tenants? Meaning, how does that work? Because you have these tenants that also have needs. How does that intersect?
It's both. So we are, of course, informed by the city because, we try to align to the goals of the city. I think it was mentioned that the city has some really ambitious goals. So, of course, we want to support the city in being able to meet those goals. We also are paying attention to what our tenants are doing. And we're trying to find the intersection points between those things. And sometimes it can look as simple as like a training that can support our businesses here, but have broader application in other industries. Sometimes it is slightly different because the businesses here can sometimes represent a growth in the marketplace that hasn't quite made its way into the mainstream.
Right.
But when you actually sit down and look at it, it's like, oh wow, this is really, really growing. We need to pay attention to this type of thing. So.
Right. What she said was really interesting, right?
Yeah, I just say really quickly that one of your tenants, your former tenants, who innovated this amazing product that now is in NYCHA, I'm like, okay, let me know when you're ready to hire my people, when you're at scale, because we're ready to go.
Right.
And that's an excellent example of looking at how the green economy is just the economy, right? It's very broad. Business changes, needs change, the market shifts, and technology being more efficient. And a lot of these things incorporate the elements of green. So it is very, very broad. And the opportunities that are there for a variety of different things. You talking a little bit about the EV charging stations and who maintains them. That came out of a market need, right? A need to have these bikes, right, that are powered by EV, that are delivering goods and services to people because it's an economic need. So it's a part of the economy that's grown. So the key is to sort of understand what those are and then, you know, build the workforce development to support that. And it will be things that we consider green. We don't have enough energy, so you have to use solar, right? We don't have enough the climate control is controlling the growing of wheat, so I guess people are using crickets to make flour or whatever. I mean, but these are needs that are coming out of a market demand in our economy and are considered green as well.
I was just going to touch on, like, I think for both of you, what you said, I think there's this element of sort of career exploration. And so what we've realized too with our workforce development within Con Edison and our nonprofit partners, part of it is a little bit of timing. So, you know, and like you just said, like we had wind farms, but for whatever powers that be, that's being pulled back. And so then we have to think about, okay, well, what are we training people for now? So it's like training people now for jobs that are currently available. And then it's also thinking about forward thinking. What are the jobs in the future? You made an excellent point that what we've realized too, so a lot of the young folks, because we've seen it, we said, hey, have you ever thought about EV or heat pumps, bringing sort of that green, clean energy lens to it? And they look at you with like blank stares, like, I didn't even know that was the thing. And you're like, what? How do you not know that? And so it's part of the process too, is that for Con Edison, we are doing job training skills, but we're also doing a huge portion of just like exposing people to the types of jobs and the innovation that can be, because technology is moving so fast, as we all know.
These skill sets are transferable, right, to different parts of the industry. So the idea of having folks understand, right, that EV and heat pump, there are potentially some transferable skills there, and these are opportunities that you can have. It broadens the workforce development opportunities.
And then there's the traditional opportunities, like the linemen
Yes.
and the cable splicers. You know, those are the traditional ones that can sometimes be takes a long time to train for.
No, absolutely.
And test for.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The test is very hard, but absolutely. But just thinking about that, and that's why, you know, I go back when we think about green jobs. It's not just, you know, working for an energy company. It's not just I only do solar. It's being able to find that job that you can transfer those skills across a wide range of jobs that haven't even been invented yet.
True.
And that you can continue to recycle and reuse those in the future.
And I think one of the also really important pieces is that layering of the green components and stuff like that, it oftentimes brings in new skills to existing jobs. So when you start talking about things like batteries and all of that type of stuff, you're now getting into a piece that is beyond traditional electrical pieces. Now you're also talking about electronics, because a lot of times they are sending out error messages and they are using Wi-Fi to connect about their usage. We were just talking about AI and like meter reading and all of these types of things. So the traditional electrician now needs to understand electronics, because now they're going to be dealing with tools or devices that have a motherboard.
And the intentionality around workforce development that takes that concept into account when we talk about how are we training and how are we doing workforce development, looking at existing skills, how do you build on them, and need to be intentional about where those intersections are so that you will give the participants those opportunities.
I'm thinking of the NYCHA population generally, and oftentimes there's some gaps, meaning what about that single mother that needs childcare and all these things? How does your organization fill in those blanks, help these folks get to the next level? Because life be lifing.
Yes, life be lifing for sure. Well, a couple things. First of all, to your point of like you have to see it to be it, right? And so part of our service model is we have a force, we have a team of folks deployed into public housing in uniform. So part of it is exposure, but then when you get down to it, the reality is life be lifing. And so sometimes you hear about it and you're ready to go, but you're actually not ready to go because there are barriers that are systemic that hold you back and don't make you able to be successful in that moment. We have social workers on our team. We have youth development folks on our team. We have a very intentional process. We have referral partners. And so we look to help folks assess if they're ready. And if they are, fantastic. We've had people that have not been ready and come back when they are. We have success stories where people have come to our program and experienced being unhoused during their time with us and still managed to navigate successfully getting through, which is amazing. I mean, we just try to figure out with them what is real and what is possible, and just really try to help coach them through it. So wraparound services exist for sure. There always needs to be more. Partners sometimes can help with that. Yeah.
What about your capacity? Meaning, if I'm someone and I'm 18 to 24 and I look at this show, and I want to get involved or engaged, you know, how many people can you take? How many lives can you change?
Thanks to Con Ed, I can change a few, but so
We're trying.
Yeah, if you're 18 to 24 and you live in affordable supportive housing across the 5 boroughs, you can apply to our program. Straight up, end of story. You get a stipend while you're with us, you get transportation costs and resources. If you live in some other part of the country, there are cores nationally doing all different types of things in rural communities, in cities, et cetera. But for our program, you just have to want to try to do something outside your comfort zone that you may have never tried before. So our program participants, they're low income people, and they might be prioritizing, like, how am I going to pay my rent, even if they live in public housing? How am I going to feed my family? How am I going to pay for medicine? They're not prioritizing necessarily climate and the question of like clean air. But when you meet people where they live and you talk to people and you say, how many people in your family have asthma? And hands go up. And you say, how many people in your neighborhood hear the exhaust trucks and the noise pollution and the bright lights coming into your community, because that's where like heavy manufacturing vehicles come through, and the hands go up. And if you connect the dots for people so that they see the value in why they should consider something, because it does affect their lives, and you're helping them to be exposed to understand that, then they want to participate. If you say, if we reduce energy costs in public housing, then maybe the funding that's used for correcting the conditions of the buildings will be more, and there will be energy savings costs, and that will lead to the quality of your life improving. And so you have to be
What's
intentional.
in it for me?
Exactly. Everybody wants to know what's in it for
What's in
them.
it
Like,
for
that's
me?
human nature.
Right.
So part of the work is really helping people to understand the value for themselves, not just because we think it's a good idea.
Absolutely. Now, we're talking a lot about these kinds of jobs where you're going to be working for someone. Now, at the Navy Yard, you're into small businesses. How does that look when it comes to people of color in this space driving this with their small businesses? Or is that still an area where you're not seeing as much of an uptick?
There's a lot of growth as more and more people of color, they're connecting to the green justice movements and those types of things. I think historically, the green justice movement hadn't always connected to the community. And now you're seeing it more. So like the company that I mentioned before that is doing biodegradable road salt, solar melts, that is an MWBE.
Oh, I didn't realize. Okay, yes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that is an MWBE. And so I think part
And that's really important, biodegradable road salts, but
Yes.
it tends to be really expensive. If they can bring the cost down, I know Con Ed would love that.
We would
because
absolutely
the
love it.
salt keeps corroding the
It does.
underground. Yeah, that would be. So who are these?
yeah.
Speak more about that, Nikki.
well, that's the thing. It's like there are a lot of really interesting like entrepreneurial ventures, startup ventures that are happening in this space. And oftentimes when we talk about the green economy, we do talk about it from the perspective of established businesses. And there's nothing wrong with talking about established businesses. But paying attention to the startup ventures that are happening, paying attention to the ones who are starting to scale, supporting those ventures are really important. And I think when it comes to thinking about disadvantaged communities and, Black and brown entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs and things like that in this space, we have to acknowledge that manufacturing can be tricky. The capital cost to start a manufacturing type of company is very different than, say, the capital cost of tech.
Right.
And so a lot of times people, get that confused. Like, you have to have more sitting capital to start a manufacturing business. And so what does that look like? And that's something that we are looking at here at the Navy Yard in terms of creating, working with different partners to create, loan programs and other things that take a look at what does it mean to be in the manufacturing space. But I do think that the way that we drive more entrepreneurs in this space is exposing them to the business that is already happening in this space. Because at the end of the day, business is problem solving. It's like identifying the problem, figuring out whether the product or service that you're bringing to market is solving that problem in an economical way that generates a profit and revenue. And so if students don't know, if young people don't know, if people of color don't know, if women don't know, if that first generation young white kid does not know about the problems that are out there, how can they then maybe I have a solution to solve this problem? So I think a lot to really start building that up is to pay attention to the entrepreneurial ventures in this space and what people are working on, is to help to expose a variety of people. So I definitely think there's a lot of space. I think there's a lot of space to cultivate this, but it's definitely about talking about the issues and helping people to connect to them so they start thinking about how can I solve this better? How can I do it in a sustainable way that's profitable and that is beneficial? Because you can't have both. You can't have that profitable business that does good. And I think that's what the green space is looking into.
Thank you, Nikki, and thank you so much, Tonya and Valerie. And we will see you next time on Brooklyn Savvy.